You need to recognize, folks, they've given up on you. When Obama called you a bitter clinger for clinging to your guns and your Bible, they recognize that you are hopeless. You are irredeemable. No matter how much we brainwash you with fake news, you're not going to bite on this agenda. So they're targeting your children. They're targeting your grandchildren. And if you don't take this seriously, folks, they are going to win.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for October 30th through November 6th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature 3 different specials: 1-ounce silver Philharmonics at $3.10 over spot, 1-ounce platinum kangaroos at $85 over spot, and pre-33 $10 gold Liberties in AU condition at $115 over melt. First, the silver Austrian Philharmonic is one of the most popular bullion coins in Europe, and frequently regarded as one of the most beautiful as well, displaying musical instruments on one side and the famed Great Organ of the Golden Hall on the other, all in 3/9 fine pure silver and made by the 900-year-old Austrian Mint. 2023 Silver Philharmonic is available at just $3.10 over spot. Next, we have the 1-ounce Platinum Kangaroo from the Perth Mint at just $85 over spot. Many consider platinum to be highly undervalued at the moment, since over the last 30 years, platinum has generally been significantly more expensive than gold, but currently sits at less than half the spot price. Best of all, the 1-ounce Platinum Kangaroo is just $85 over spot, giving you access to a premier coin in a premier metal at one of the lowest prices in 20 years. Finally, the Gold Liberty is one of the most famed gold coins in history, a physical reminder of the gold standard and hard currency in the United States. Minted from 1838 through 1907, the $10 Liberty offers just under half a troy ounce of gold in a 90% fine coin. These coins are in AU almost uncirculated condition and available at just $115 over melt, offering a great way to hold American history at a great price. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always privileged to have this returning guest who's widely traveled and very informed about what's going on in our world today and why we need to be more informed ourselves. Alex Newman is the CEO of LibertySentinel.org. He joins us again this Monday, October 30th, 2023. Alex, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
We've interviewed you several times in the past on topics of very relevant importance to our viewers and subscribers. Right now, there's a lot going on that has been poised to threaten our national sovereignty, our individual freedoms and liberties, all in the name of the virtue of saving Mother Earth, saving Mother Nature, saving the planet. And to do that, we have to hand over our lives and our sovereignty to our global overlords. You've talked to us in the past about why that might not be the best thing for us, and not even the best thing for Mother Earth. So can you, I understand you've got some upcoming travel to the Middle East, to some major conferences in the near future. Could you talk to us about what might be a sea change in this, what seemed like an inexorable march towards this participation in this global steamroller of anti-global warming, climate change, whatever, and why it's important, why we need to be paying attention?
Yeah, well, thank you, Donegan. It's great to be here. A lot to unpack there. The climate issue, if you want to call it that, some people call it a hoax or whatever your preferred terminology, is one of the most important issues facing humanity right now. But your average American has no clue because the media is largely avoiding even mentioning it. They've looked at the polling data. There was some new data just released a few months ago, an AP North poll that showed most Americans still don't believe that human activities are driving climate change. And so, they're pushing on a dead horse here. They're beating a dead horse, relentlessly pushing on a string. They know that when it comes to the United States, when it comes to America, the public is just not going for it. Even the people who do believe global warming is a serious issue, man-made global warming, this is a silly hypothesis in my opinion. But even those people, the majority of them are not willing to pay a single extra dollar on their electricity bill each month to allegedly combat this supposed problem. So it really is a dead horse as far as Americans are concerned, and that's why you're not hearing anything about it. But I've been going to these climate conferences, these UN climate conferences, my entire career in journalism. The very next year after I got out of journalism school, I was off to Copenhagen to cover the COP15. I've been to almost all of them since then. I'll be headed back to the Middle East in about a month to cover the COP28. I covered the COP27 last year on the Sinai Peninsula. So I've had a front row seat to this. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'll be in Baltimore. We're doing a big press conference through Church Militant and another group. We're working to educate the Catholic bishops and the archbishops on why this issue is so dangerous, even based on Catholic teaching. So really, really critical subject. Now, at the last one, they came out with a new 10 commandments. All these religious leaders walked to the top of Mount Sinai and they unveiled a new 10 commandments. In the run-up to the event, the UN put out a report saying that the old systems of morality and ethics were not really adequate anymore to saving Mother Earth from this horrible plague of humans. And so they said we need a new moral code, basically. We need people to act differently. We need people to make choices and decisions based on new codes of morality and ethics. And so that's what we're watching here. Now, people are familiar with Agenda 2030. There's been a little bit of reporting on that. They view this as a problem that requires what they themselves describe, Dunnigan, as a three-legged stool. You've got the first leg of the stool, that's the governments of the world. So Agenda 2030, all the national governments of the world, all the dictatorships, the kleptocracies, they all came together. They said, this is the master plan for humanity. A couple years later, the World Economic Forum brought the business community to the table. They signed a strategic partnership with the United Nations to implement Agenda 2030. Well, now what we're watching is the religions of the world are being brought on board this bandwagon. Climate change is the primary pretext justifying all of it, right? All the transformations in your life, agriculture, business, law, family, population, all of it is being justified by this pretext of man-made climate change. And so what's happening here, it's hard to overstate the significance, Dunnigan, but I recognize that your average American just has no clue because the media is not talking about it. But I'll just say this one more thing before kicking it back to you. At the last climate summit, and again, I know people didn't hear about this in the media, but it's huge. John Kerry, climate czar for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden both pleaded guilty on behalf of the United States of America to the false accusation, to the false charge that Americans and Westerners are responsible for man-made global warming. So, well, we industrialized, we built power plants, we had cars, we, did productive agriculture. Basically, we liberated humanity from back-breaking labor. We extended life expectancies by 40 to 50 years for the average person on the planet. We made the quality of life drastically higher. And so for that, you evil Americans, you are now expected to pay massive amounts of money. And that's what's going to be decided supposedly at this next summit in Dubai, is exactly how much we as the guilty party are required to pay and exactly what the mechanism will be to extract our wealth and redistribute it to the third world kleptocrats who've kept their people in poverty for so long.
You mentioned three very large institutional groups, the governments of the world, the businesses of the world, and the religions of the world. You didn't mention, but you sort of brushed up against it, is basically the complicity of media, education, and entertainment. Do you want to touch on that before we move on?
Well, the media has been, I call it the cheerleading section, Dunnigan, and people would not believe the things that I see at these conferences. You have mass murdering dictatorships coming out and saying things that are so asinine, so unbelievable that it's like living in another universe. At the first one I went to in Copenhagen, you had the Communist Chinese delegation talking. They had some weird formula. They said, because of our one-child policy, which they didn't mention, involves forced abortions, forced sterilization, actual killing of babies like 9 months in the womb, ready to come out. They're killing these babies. And so, they had this formula that each new child would have produced, I forget the number, the X amount of CO2, and therefore if you multiply the number of children they prevented from being born by the amount of CO2 they would have emitted, China has reduced global CO2 emissions by whatever the number was, Y, and all these idiot trained seals, yay, congratulations, and over again, this is what you see. And now these are supposed to be reporters. These are supposed to be journalists. These are supposed to be people who are asking hard questions. These are supposed to be people who are holding the powerful accountable, who are reporting things that the powerful don't want out there. Instead, they're behaving like trained SEALs, giving standing ovations to mass murdering dictatorships when they say absolutely crazy things like the Communist Chinese. And they do this at every single one. So what we're dealing with as far as the media is concerned is truly incredible. Now, for most of the world, they're getting a massive, nonstop flow of crazy propaganda on this. Antonio Guterres, the socialist who runs the United Nations, he's over in Nepal today, actually, whining about the glaciers, and if we don't give up all our power and freedom and money to the UN, more glaciers are going to disappear, whatever. And all over the world, the media is just uncritically parroting this idiot propaganda. In the United States, total silence. You can turn on your CNN or your Fox News or your ABC, NBC, CBS. You're not going to hear about this. Why? Because, again, they know if Americans figure out that this process is even happening, that they're right now discussing looting our people of trillions of dollars to redistribute money under this phony pretext, they'd have a catastrophe on their hands. I mean, the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has publicly come out and said this is a cult, this is a false religion run by elitists who want to take control of governments and basically enslave us. I mean, these are the words of our new Speaker of the House. And so they realize that the more Americans find out that this is going on, the more pressure there will be on Congress, the less money they're going to have. Already, we see the House Appropriations Committee now cutting off funding to a whole bunch of UN projects and agencies. Just most recently, just within the last couple of weeks, they cut off funding for the WHO. We'll see if that survives Biden and the media whining about, shutting down the government and all the rest of it. But they're moving in the right direction. And so for the UN now, this is do or die time. And that is why in the United States, they tried with the media propaganda. They started back in the 70s and the 80s with the global cooling cover story in the big magazines. They said we got to. Interestingly, the solution to global cooling was exactly the same as the solution to global warming. I don't know how you explain that. Give up your money, give up your freedom, give the UN more power. We'll save you from global cooling. Then it was global warming, and then climate change, et cetera. So the media has been parroting this propaganda for a very long time. They've finally realized that Americans are not going to bite. And so now they're just pretending like it's not going on, hoping that Joe Biden and the Democrats will be able to ram this through before Americans can pay attention. But for the rest of the world, then again, they are being inundated in a sea of propaganda on this very issue.
You mentioned the media. What about education? My wife and I and your wife and you are home educating our children because we didn't want them to be indoctrinated in the government schools, among other reasons. We just wanted family time together, etc. But what has been happening to our younger generation in the halls of learning regarding the topics of voluntarily surrendering not only our personal privacy, individual sovereignty, national sovereignty, fertility, etc., all in the name of saving Mother Earth?
Yeah, that's where the real action is happening in the United States, Dunnigan, in classrooms all over America, including allegedly super conservative states like my home state of Florida. They are brainwashing these children like you cannot imagine, starting in kindergarten. They're teaching them that human emissions of CO2, which, when I was a kid, we learned that was the gas of life. Humans exhale it about 2 pounds every day. Plants use it for photosynthesis, and they release oxygen. It's this beautiful cycle. I actually interviewed Trump's climate advisor on this a few years ago. He told me that the planet is starving for more CO2. He said the plants are designed to live in an atmosphere with way more CO2 than we currently have, 4 to 5 times as much as what he said. I thought design, that's an interesting word for a physicist from Princeton University. But, praise the Lord, that was cool. But so they're teaching our kids that this gas, the gas of life, is a toxic pollution, and that everything and anything must be on the table to reduce the levels of this toxic pollution. And so they are, first of all, brainwashing them. And if you look at, for example, the next generation science standards, these are being used in almost every public school in almost every state in this country. They were developed by the same people who brought you Common Core. You get basically 12 years of global warming propaganda. You'll never learn the scientific method because then you know the propaganda doesn't make sense. But you'll learn that there's infinite genders, that climate change is going to kill us if we don't give up our freedom, etc. And then they even take it a step further here, Dunnigan. They're not just brainwashing the kids. I've got videos of these clowns. First, they brainwash the kids. Then they tell them, here's a letter. You should sign this letter to your congressman demanding that they pass comprehensive climate legislation to protect the climate and protect the planet from this noxious, terrible gas that is CO2. This is actually their key weapon. And they've said it over and over again, Dunnigan. If you go back, for example, to the early 1990s, the very first climate convention, if you will. This was negotiated in Rio at the Earth Summit. It was called Agenda 21. It was the UN agenda for the 21st century. Now, if you go to chapter 36 of Agenda 21, you'll find something very interesting, and I can actually quote from it. What they say is, and I'm quoting here, education is critical for promoting sustainable development. Formal and non-formal education are indispensable to changing people's attitudes. Education is critical, they say, for achieving environmental and ethical awareness, values and attitudes, skills and behavior that are consistent with sustainable development. They say it needs to include spiritual development and that it must be integrated into all disciplines. This is the official text of the global agreement approved by every national government virtually on the planet, including the United States of America by George H.W. Bush. So they tell you that education, by which they mean brainwashing and propaganda, is the primary tool they're going to use to bring about this agenda, really, I believe, from the pit of hell of what they call sustainable development. The chief pretext justifying this whole sustainable development thing is man-made global warming, is the man-made global warming hypothesis. So you need to recognize, folks, they've given up on you. When Obama called you a bitter clinger for clinging to your guns and your Bible, they recognize that you are hopeless. You are irredeemable. No matter how much we brainwash you with fake news, you're not going to bite on this agenda. So they're targeting your children. They're targeting your grandchildren. And if you don't take this seriously, folks, they are going to win.
Now, before we leave education, the other thing that happens here is you mentioned not teaching the scientific method. That's extremely important. I have a scientific degree background. That's what my whole career was in engineering and science. Absolutely essential to understand, not only as you would have as a journalist, you need to understand valid argumentation and logic, that sort of thing. But in addition to that, the scientific method, it's important to have the populace complicit and compliant by not teaching them what science truly is, because then you can make brash claims, as we've heard in the last 3 years, of I am science, or anyone who goes against what I'm saying is going against science. So you can slap the label science on top of anything and people will follow it because they believe that our standard of living has been brought to us by science, and therefore science is the way to progress towards the ultimate good, and therefore let's all just do whatever science says, but without any concept of what science actually consists of. And that's been used to do some very unscientific things in the last few years in particular that people didn't challenge on the whole because they didn't understand it. Any further thoughts about the loss of the credibility or the breach of contract of trust with the scientific world, whether it's medical, whether it's any of these other ones, and the people that they are supposedly helping to inform, and how that's affecting us?
Yeah, that's such a critical point to understand, Dunnigan, because we've heard this whole science über alles narrative before, using actual pseudoscience, right? This is exactly what the National Socialists in Germany said, the Nazis. And, they weren't alone. They got ideas from Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. They got a lot of their funding from the Rockefeller weirdos who were huge supporters of eugenics. And they came up with this totally pseudoscientific, absolutely ridiculous notion that some races were better than other races and black people were inferior and stupid people were inferior, whatever. So we needed to eugenics, good genetic. They thought if we could just hijack evolution, if we could just use science to improve the human race, then everything would be better. And so these kinds of ideas, totally divorced from morality, totally divorced from traditional Christian ethics, resulted in some of the most ghastly things that we have seen in all of human history. We're headed in that direction again, and people don't realize it because they don't know the history and they don't know the science, so they don't see the parallels here. Science, so-called, or I would say pseudoscience, quackery, is actually being used as the justification for totally restructuring government, business, and life around the world. You used to hear a lot about this term technocracy. It's kind of gotten a bad smell now, with the weirdos who were peddling it back in the 1930s at Columbia University. Some of them got exposed for some nasty things, plagiarism and stuff. And so it kind of got a bad smell. But if you read a lot of the global elitists whose views and ideas are still guiding humanity, still guiding governments, still guiding Fortune 500 companies today, what they will tell you is that this new world order is going to be underpinned by science and efficiency. So we don't want this whole messy political process. We don't want people thinking they can govern themselves. There's a science here. And so under the guise of science, they're going to take over production. They're going to take over consumption. They're going to take over every element of life and say, science requires this. And we saw it so clearly in these last 3 years. Science demands that you do X, Y, Z, that you put a diaper on your face, that you inject something into your arm, that you do this to your children, that we do this through government policy, that we take control of the economy under the guise of global warming. So if they just say science demands, and our children have been brainwashed to the point where they don't even know what science is, well, the all-powerful God of science has spoken, and therefore we must submit, right? When they say science says or science demands, That means, in other words, this is not something that you get to vote on. This is not something that we're going to debate. Science has decreed. And of course, this is 100% pseudoscience using complicated terminology to try to confuse people and try to make you feel like you're an idiot if you ask questions. Don't believe it, folks. Start off with learning the scientific method. Why would they not want your children to learn this? Once you figure that out, it will all make sense.
One more stone to turn here is that of entertainment and how Hollywood got an inordinate and disproportionate influence in the popular sentiment. Can you talk about how that has also been leveraged to move the hearts and minds, especially of the younger generation?
Yeah, and so education and entertainment are kind of on parallel tracks, right? So they brainwash and they dumb down the children in the government school system, and then the air support is where they come in with the Holly weirdos and the fake propaganda movies and things like this. And so we've seen a lot of that, right? Over the last 20 years, we've seen so many films about the alleged climate crisis. Some were kind of like fictional, but, supposed to make you think that this is based in reality. And then some, like Al Gore's, right? I mean, fictional again, but pretending to be a legitimate documentary, pretending to express truth. I mean, even the British courts, which are by the way incredibly corrupt, found that no, you can't show this to children without telling them that, hey, there's at least these 12 major factual errors. That's propaganda. You can't do that. So even the British courts said this was pseudoscientific propaganda. But the entertainment world, and it's not just on the climate issue, as you know, Dunnigan, right? They're teaching the kids in school that science says there are infinite genders, and that science says that if you were born in the wrong body, you should go and start taking puberty blockers or testosterone injections, preparing yourself for surgical mutilation. And then they come in with the air support. The cartoons when you get home, the TV shows that shows, the guy who's confused about his gender. He's so cool. And everybody's just like, wow, you're so special. I wish I could be more like you. What does that do to the child? So psychologically, they're getting dumbed down and brainwashed at school. And then they're being told by the entertainment that this is cool. This is what everybody believes. This is the way things need to be. And so when you have it's kind of like a pincer strategy, right? They've got the mind of these young people in a vice grip, squeezing from both ends, and by dumbing them down in the public school system, by failing to teach them logic, by failing to teach them even how to read properly, by basically making them totally dependent on the system, if you will, for information, for knowledge, etc. They have incapacitated and handicapped at least a whole generation of Americans. Maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4, arguably. And folks, we have got to take this seriously. It's not just the climate. It's not just the transgenderism. This is going to affect every area of your life. And it all runs through these vehicles that we've been talking about.
And the outcomes of these pushes towards globalism, collectivism, basically getting in line and doing what you're told on a global basis, and that subjugation of autonomy of the person themselves, even the sanctity of the human person, being told you have to take things into your body that are experimental, but we're not going to admit that they're experimental. So all of that has been taking away not only our privacy and our freedom and our liberty, but a lot of our intrinsic natural rights. And if you look at that, how that's playing out, it really leads to a grim outcome unless people stand up and say, that's not how it's going to be for my children, my family. And you've given people lots of ideas on how they can take more of a stand in their own lives. And it can start with very simple, very basic things. Do you have just a top few things that come to mind that can give courage and give hope to parents who want to opt out of this for themselves and their children for the good of their family's future?
Yeah, it'll be one of the best decisions you ever make in your entire life, and I say that unequivocally. You cannot possibly do a worse job than the system that was designed to hurt your children is doing. So, don't be scared about it. What you should be concerned about is what happens if you don't do anything. What happens if you continue leaving them in there? So, parents, nobody loves your children more than you love them. Nobody knows your children better than you know them. There really is nobody better suited to teaching your children than you, if you can do it. Now, I recognize, homeschooling is a sacrifice, it's difficult, but I can tell you unequivocally, it is worth it. It is definitely one of the best decisions you'll ever make in your life. And if you, for whatever reason, cannot do that, find some other alternative. Get together with a co-op, start a micro school, start a pod, go to your church and tell the pastor we've got to do something to help these kids. I serve on the board of the Freedom Project Academy. It's an online classical K through 12 Christian school. We can help you there. So there's all these different options. There's never been a better time in human history for parents to take charge of educating their own children. There are more resources, more options, more financial tools to help you than there ever have been. So folks, now's a really good time to do it. And it's not just your children's future that depends on the outcome of these battles. I mean, the future of our whole country, of the whole world, is going to depend on what American parents do right now for the education of their children. So folks, civilization is literally hanging in the balance here. And not to be too overly dramatic, but if we mess this up, it's going to be really bad. So pray about it, think about it, and make the right choice.
We've been speaking with Alex Newman. He's the CEO of LibertySentinel.org. It's a good place to get started, get plugged in, sign up for their publications. Alex, what can people take advantage of if they do that?
So we send out 2 newsletters every week through LibertySentinel.org. You just put your email in there, and we'll just keep you updated on all the most important things going on that the fake media is not talking about or that they are spinning. And then I'm on all the social medias and things. Also, I'll be covering the next climate summit for the New American magazine. That's at thenewamerican.com. I serve not just as senior editor there, but as foreign correspondent. So if people want to get the truth about what's going on at this UN climate summit, folks, they're talking about the future of not just your country, but all humanity. You can get that at thenewamerican.com, or you can become a subscriber to the print magazine.
Well, we're grateful for your presence here. We can't stop having you come because we need this kind of comprehensive insight and encouragement and resources. Very helpful to our subscribers, our viewers, folks, so that you don't miss a single episode with Alex or any of our other guests. Make sure you go and sign up for our all-free newsletter. We don't share your email address with anyone. Just go to libertyandfinance.com, put in your name, your email address, click submit. Make sure you confirm on the confirming email. You'll get 1 email in your inbox per day with our latest interviews, including any of our interviews with Alex and our other guests. And you don't want to miss out on a thing. Alex Newman, CEO of LibertySentinel.org. Thanks for joining us again on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you for having me, Dunnigan.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us. Discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH, or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.